Welcome to The Know, I'm Mica.
And I'm Gus.
When you play a multiplayer game, the matchmaking process is pretty simple, right? You get matched up against a player or a group of players about equal to your skill level, then you guys fight it out to see who wins. It's pretty straightforward, right?
Well, EA wants to change all of that,
No.
or at least it's thinking really hard about it. The publisher has filed for a couple of patents that have some people worried about the future of online matchmaking.
And it all has to do with, you guessed it, microtransactions.
Of course.
I'm just, okay, EA, sure. Already some gamers are calling this yet another shady monetization tactic that underscores how much profits are valued over everything else.
Okay, little background first. This comes to us thanks to the YouTuber Yang Yi, who discovered the patents that EA applied for back in 2016. The first patent deals with something called dynamic difficulty adjustment.
Essentially, it's a way to adjust the difficulty of a game based on how someone is doing. If you're having trouble with a boss, the game would get easier. If you're speeding through it with no trouble, it would get harder. So you can imagine how this would affect something like Dark Souls.
If you're speeding through it, how would it affect speedrunning?
Oh.
If it gets more difficult. The goal is simple, to prevent gamers from getting bored or frustrated and quitting the game, which is obviously the last thing a dev wants.
But it's the second patent that really triggered alarms for some gamers. It has to do with something called engaged optimized matchmaking.
Oh, EOM.
Yes, of course, EOM, which is a way to match up players with opponents in multiplayer matches.
In that patent, EA writes, matchmaking connects multiple players to participate in online player versus player games. Current matchmaking systems depend on a single core strategy: create fair games at all times. These systems pair similarly skilled players on the assumption that a fair game is the best player experience. We will demonstrate, however, that this intuitive assumption sometimes fails and that matchmaking based on fairness is not optimal for engagement. Wow, not optimal? So what is it that EA is proposing? Well, they want a framework that maximizes overall player engagement. They go on to say, we prove that equal skill-based matchmaking is a special case of EOMM. Oh my god, they used it.
They actually used it.
I was joking. It's a case of EOMM on a highly simplified assumption that rarely holds in reality.
So basically what they're saying is that matchmaking people at equal skill levels isn't what they ultimately want. What they want is for gamers to keep playing, and to accomplish that goal, they have some proposals, so fuck your fun. They don't care about that.
They'll play their game.
Yeah.
In the patent, EA proposes an algorithm that incorporates everything from someone's playstyle to their willingness to spend money, even their sportsmanship. Yang Yi argues that this means that EA games could adjust their matchmaking criteria to keep you playing. If you're on a losing streak, the game would pair you against a weaker opponent so that you'll be more likely to win. Again, all with the goal of keeping you playing. Or on the other side of the coin, if you win a bunch of games in a row, the game might put you against a super hard opponent so that you'll lose.
And of course, the ultimate goal is to keep you in the game so that you'll be more likely to spend money.
Yang Yi summed up the fear that a lot of gamers have when he said, we might be looking at a future in which EA games decide for us when we get to win, lose, or draw. This is psychological manipulation at its finest.
Not to mention it's going to throw a huge wrench in esports. Jim Sterling also weighed in on the issue, saying that EA has been working on its own methods of digging around in your head, like money-fueled Charles Xavier's, in order to manipulate you into spending more money on a game you've already spent money on.
It's worth noting that we don't know if EA's patents were approved, so EA could be incorporating these strategies right now in its games, we just don't know.
Lovely.
This comes at a time when EA is in the bad graces of a lot of gamers, and that's really putting it mildly. You probably remember the gigantic backlash last year to Star Wars Battlefront 2 and all of its loot boxes, with lots of gamers claiming that EA had gone too far with their intrusiveness.
That backlash led to lower than expected sales for Battlefront 2's, and EA's stock price even took a hit.
And this patent will only feed into the perception that EA is more concerned with extracting as much money as possible from gamers. It's also yet another reminder that game publishers are tracking us a lot more closely than any of us thought.
But it's worth noting that EA is not the only big publisher to file a patent to try and get us to spend money in games. Thanks to patent filings, we've learned that at least one more of the big game publishers has at least researched the possibility of doing pretty much the same thing.
Last fall, it was reported that Activision got a patent for a system for driving microtransactions in multiplayer video games, which basically is a method that the company uses to convince people to keep buying in-game items. That patent also involved in-game matchmaking, and it involved practices like pairing an expert player with a newbie to encourage that newbie to buy gear to be more like the good player.
Oh, and then after you buy that weapon, the game might then just adjust which matches you're placed in so you can make the maximum use of your new toy. That way you feel happy with what you bought and you buy even more shiny new guns. Wow, that's not evil at all.
As we've said, it's just another example that microtransactions are one of the cornerstones, if not the cornerstone, for modern AAA gaming efforts. These companies are businesses after all, and their main goal is to make as much sweet money as possible.
The big question, though, is how gamers will react to this. If there's backlash like we've seen in Battlefront, then the EAs of the world have shown that they'll back down, at least, temporarily.
But overall, as these patents have shown, these companies are tracking pretty much everything we do, and they're using every bit of that info to try and judge our behavior and sell us as much stuff as possible, and that's a pattern that's not likely to change anytime soon.
What do you guys think of EA's latest patent? Let us know in the comments.
And for other gaming news, be sure to like this video. If you're new around here, subscribe to the know.
Essentially, it's a way to adjust the difficulty of how a game is based on how someone. Thanks to patent filings, we've learned that at least one more of the game. I'm gonna go back. The big question, though, is how gamers will react to this. If there's backlash like we've seen in Battlefront, then the EAs of the world will have.